Look closely at the faces on Mount Rushmore. The smooth contours and precise details look like the painstaking work of a master sculptor, or perhaps even a highly unusual natural formation. But the people who actually built this had zero artistic experience. They were local gold miners armed with heavy machinery, thick cables, and thousands of pounds of dynamite. In the early 1920s, the state of South Dakota was struggling. They needed an economic engine to survive, and state historian Doane Robinson believed a massive roadside attraction would bring in tourists from across the country. Robinson got his inspiration from this massive bas-relief carving underway on Stone Mountain in Georgia. He saw the crowds it drew and wanted to replicate that success in the Black Hills. He reached out to the sculptor who started that Georgia project, Gutzon Borglum. Robinson originally suggested carving regional Wild West heroes, but Borglum knew that featuring iconic U.S. presidents would guarantee a much larger national audience. By the summer of 1925, Borglum found his canvas, a 500-foot cliff made of fine-grained granite. The rock was structurally perfect for carving, but it presented an immediate logistical nightmare. It was entirely inaccessible to human workers. Before a single chisel struck stone, they had to build a way up. In 1927, they built a new transport road, a base worker village, and a massive wooden staircase. At the top, they erected a winch house. Operators inside used thick cables to lower the workers over the sheer drop, suspending them on small leather seats to reach the rock face. The first phase of carving was pure brute force. Specialists placed careful charges of dynamite to blast away large chunks of the surface rock, roughly shaping the cliff into massive egg-like ovals. To actually carve the facial features, the miners had to use 30-kilogram jackhammers. Rustling a tool that heavy while dangling hundreds of feet in the air is difficult enough, but finding a way to power them was a major engineering hurdle. This diagram shows their industrial workaround. 3 massive air compressors ran off the local gold mine's electricity at the base of the mountain. These pushed air through a 2,000-foot iron pipe up the staircase, branching out to power 16 jackhammers on the cliff face. Supplying power and accessing the rock solved the physical barriers, but these workers still had no artistic training. They needed a foolproof way to know where to drill to form a recognizable human face. Borglum had built a 5-foot desktop model of the presidents. On flat surfaces, artists could use projectors to enlarge a design, but Mount Rushmore was highly three-dimensional, meaning he needed a reliable way to map data from his small model onto a 60-foot cliff. He found his answer in ancient Greek technology. Greek and Roman sculptors used a tool called a pointing machine to make identical, one-to-one scale copies of existing statues. A metal arm swings around a fixed central axis on top of Borglum's model. Placing the tip on a specific facial feature measured 3 variables: angle, horizontal reach, and vertical drop. Multiplying these measurements by 12 transferred the exact point to the real mountain. The crew painted massive grids directly onto the rock face. Using a giant version of the pointing machine mounted above the carving, they plotted these multiplied points, giving the miners an exact guide on where to place their bits and how deep to drill. By relying entirely on geometry, Borglum removed subjective interpretation from the process. The miners didn't have to sculpt, they just had to follow a massive mathematical paint-by-number system. To remove rock accurately without cracking the faces, the crew used a technique called honeycomb drilling. They drilled tight clusters of holes right next to each other, weakening the stones so they could easily hammer out excess material by hand. Getting the basic shape down was one thing, but making the stone look alive was another. Classical stone statues usually have perfectly smooth eyes, which gives them a blank, lifeless stare. Borglum wanted his presidents to have a realistic shine. To create this effect, workers carefully carved out a deep, dark recess to act as the pupil, which would naturally sit in shadow. But right in the center of that hole, they deliberately left a protruding, square block of uncut stone. From a distance, sunlight hits that uncut square, creating an optical illusion of a bright reflection in the eye. To finish the skin, the crew performed a process called bumping, using a specialized bit to pulverize the rough granite surface until it turned completely smooth and brilliant white. Through these optical tricks and highly controlled micro-destruction, The harsh gray granite was transformed into soft, highly detailed skin. 14 years, men spent 8 hours a day dangling over a deadly drop, gripping heavy, vibrating machinery, all for just 50 cents an hour, passed away unexpectedly, and as the United States was drawn into the Second World War, the project's funding and national attention evaporated. Yet the most remarkable statistic of the entire project is one of survival. Despite 14 years of daily dynamite blasts, extreme weather, and hanging over a 500-foot abyss, not a single worker lost their life. Mount Rushmore operates on an incredibly convincing illusion. It looks like the effort of a single masterful artist. But the reality is that it stands as a permanent testament to the local miners who used simple math, high-pressure air, and precise explosives to engineer a mountain.